Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the December 6th City Council meeting. I would like to now call the meeting to order at 7 o'clock. Let's see who I can ask today. Jessica, would you lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Councilwoman Wadsworth.
Here.
Councilman Sandroto. Councilman Reed.
Councilman Reed didn't pop back into this meeting yet.
Councilwoman Funk.
Here.
Okay, we do have a quorum then. So Councilman Reed can't make it, is that?
I don't know where he's at.
He didn't, it doesn't look like he showed up on that.
Okay, hopefully he knows the meeting. Okay, we do have a quorum, so we can proceed. The consent agenda is first, which consists of the regular council meeting minutes for November 15th, the special council budget workshop meeting minutes of November 30th, bills and communications.
Yeah, he's up there. Can you let Bill in?
Yeah, I think so.
He was in the waiting room.
Pardon?
He's in the waiting room, so he's letting. him in.
Oh, okay.
Madam Mayor, I have a couple of questions on bills and communications.
Yes, one moment. Let's make sure Councilman Reed is back with us.
Correct.
We went ahead and started without you,
I
Councilman.
am back.
Okay, thank you.
Couldn't get the thing
We're
back.
on- We're on the consent agenda
So
and Councilwoman Funk has a question. Would you like to pull out something from the consent agenda?
Yeah, the bills and communications, please.
Okay. So we'll pull those out. And I would entertain a motion to approve the regular council meeting minutes and the special council meeting minutes.
Madam Mayor, I don't see any problems. I'll motion to approve the consent agenda with the remaining items.
Okay,
Second.
all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Wadsworth, aye.
Reed, I,
Okay, motion carries. Now the bills and communications.
Yep, okay, bills and communications. The totals for everything look great. On the payroll vouchers, though, it says payroll voucher transactions 3860 to 3937. And I think that there's some gaps in the numbering based on the support that's in the packet. And just wanted to ask for a double check there.
It's because payroll is done like in the morning and then the like AFLAC, Department of Retirement Systems, they're not done until later in the day. It's why it comes up differently.
So do we have to do anything about the gaps? The example you have is exactly what I'm talking about. The example of the 3879 and then there's a gap to 3924.
And I don't know, I would have to go back and look and see why it does that. I don't know unless it has to do with, well, no, if you look at the regular claims, it depends on when it's updated. And so Diana went and she had the other claims all put in, she updated those, and then then you'll see that like AFLAC and Department of Retirement, I've split payroll and the claims out separately so that you know how much is being paid out in payroll and then how much is being paid out in claims is essentially what I've done. If you would prefer it not be done like that, I can put it all together.
Well, no,
I think,
this actually should be split out, but I think what Sarah's really getting at is there's missing transaction numbers.
And I will have to go back and see where those are at or why they are missing.
and so as an example, if we go to the after payroll to the regular vouchers and all the dollar amounts look exactly correct. But on PDF page 24, the first claim, it's just a timing, Carla. I just want to, I'm still learning too. So the first transaction number is 3769. And then it makes sense that the next transaction is 3885 because that first one was something from October. So y'all were probably working on that for a while. And now it's going through. But I just wonder, as we work to approve these, do we need to message it differently? Like, do we need to say approve claim number 3769 and 3885 to 3922 or something? That's the question that I have.
And it's very possible that that's what we need to do.
Okay. And if anybody has any direction, I'm happy to, make that motion. I don't know. Let me know.
Well, I don't know the answer either, but I wonder if those are like negative or return payments or something that aren't being processed on this.
I can't answer the question unless I'm looking at the system to see what they are.
You said the dollar figures are correct, Sarah. You've checked that.
That's what I mean, the math all makes sense. The expenses all make sense. It was just the claim numbers. And again, I'm just trying to learn more about it. I could read what I think we could approve, which is it's just a change in the transaction numbers for the payroll and the other vouchers.
Okay, I think it would be helpful if you could do that.
Okay,
Make those changes and then we can go ahead and pay the bills.
You
keep
could,
moving forward.
Sarah, you could just exclude the missing voucher numbers from the check register.
And then just have so just approve it as stated, but only for those voucher numbers listed in the check register.
Right.
Perfect. Thanks for the clarification. And do we need to make a motion to do that, or?
I'll just read the motion as it stated as that, and I'll give you the second.
Okay. I move to approve payroll voucher transaction 3860 through 3937 is listed in the amount of $63,564.79 and claim check number 32224 in the amount of $769 for a total of $64,333.79. Only for those transactions listed within the voucher, the check register details within the packet. And I move to approve claim voucher numbers 3769 through 3922 in the amount of $46,110.01 with EFTs in the amount of $23,391.44 for the total amount of $69,501.45 with a grand total of $133,835.24. November 16th through November 30th for those items listed from the check register within the council packet for today's meeting.
Okay, do I have a
Second.
Okay, motion is seconded. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Reed, aye.
Sandra, do I?
Wadsworth,
Okay.
Okay, motion carries. Approval of the agenda is next, and I do want to make some changes to the agenda. Because the weather is bad and we have Millyanne and Nicole here, they would like to move the approvals of the items that are on for public hearing, up ahead of the executive sessions, and that would be items 2 for approval. That's D2 through D6. And I would move those to prior to the executive sessions. And then with the executive sessions, I would like to leave the first executive session where it is and move the second 2 executive session in 2 and 3 to the end of the items for approval.
Madam Mayor, another item, M6, needs to be removed.
Which one?
M6, interview council candidate.
Oh, okay.
Is there a third, is there no longer 3 council candidates? Is there just 2?
Correct. The last one just dropped out. So we will make our decision
Tonight.
tonight. And so actually, I guess we can still have the executive session if we need to go in and discuss this again, but we did have one last time.
Yeah, but we didn't make a decision.
We did not make a decision, that's correct.
Or,
So we'll leave it in then, and just cross out item M6.
and I don't think we really had a heavy discussion either, so.
Okay,
Just to clarify, you were going to move items or the approvals for O2, O3, O4, and O5
and 06.
and O6. And you're gonna put those approvals at the end of each of the public hearings?
No, I would just move all of them together at the end of the public hearings.
Okay, okay. Before the items for discussion.
Yes.
Okay.
It would actually. Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
And then the executive session in 2 and in 3 would be moved to the end of the items for approval.
Okay.
Okay, I would entertain a motion to accept those changes.
Motion to approve is amended.
Second.
Okay, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Sandretto, aye.
Wadsworth, aye.
Reed, aye.
Okay, motion carries. Okay, moving on now, we have no proclamations or acknowledgements. We'll move to visitor comments, and these are for non-agenda items only. Is there anyone here that would like to make a visitor comment? Okay, hearing none. We will move on to our regular reports. So the staff reports, we have tonight, we have just the engineers report and committee meeting reports. Are there any committee meeting reports?
Only report is brief for me. Attended the executive committee for Ben Franklin Transit. Set the board meeting agendas and went through the different proposals. And their budget is on slated for approval this Thursday.
Okay. Does anyone else want to have any committee reports?
Madam Mayor, this is Sarah, and I had one update, which was pursuant to our last workshop actually, there was a request to go ahead and follow up with Representative Skylar Rude to find out his availability on Washington State capital budget requests and talk and kind of an introduction to Benton City since he's new to our area. And we have a tentative meeting set up for Monday, December 19th at 2:30. The application for Washington State capital budget request is not yet available, but Connor, his aide, his lead person in his office, expects it should come out hopefully before that time. Madam Mayor's confirmed herself to be available Monday, the 19th at 2:30. I'm not sure if the meeting will be in person or over Zoom. If anybody else from council is interested in participating, perhaps let us know. We can have another council member attend, or if someone would like, 2 people would like to attend, I'm happy to exclude myself. We're just working to confirm that that meeting on Monday, December 19th at 2:30 is either in Zoom or in person. That's the only update I have for now.
Okay. Any other council reports? I would like to say that I also have been in meetings with FEMA and Department of Ecology on the floodplain management. And I'm trying to schedule a meeting between FEMA, Ecology, and Fish and Wildlife regarding the no-rise calculation. Hasn't been set up yet. I believe I emailed all of
Yeah, I
you
read
on the
your
status
email.
of that.
They said as long as you're moving on it, we're
Pardon?
good. They said as long as you're moving on it and working on it, they're good.
Yeah.
So,
Okay. Does AHBL have a staff report tonight or just for each option? Okay, all right, thank you. Chamber of Commerce is not going to be giving their report. Jose, are you going to be giving the engineering report for Mr. Rainey?
He didn't tell me anything. So
Okay. All right. Did we receive an engineering? I believe we did. Is in the packet?
There's an engineer report
Okay.
there.
All right. Yes, that's right. I have that here. Okay. All right, so now we can end our regular session. And we'll move into the administrative hearing. So the first legislative hearing that we have is on tiny houses. And Millie Ann will be discussing this.
Hi, Margaret, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you fine.
I'm Millie Ann. I work with AHBL. We're contracted as planners for Benton City. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about tiny houses. So this is a proposed ordinance to amend some of your code sections. And the purpose of the revisions is to develop a path for development of tiny houses with wheels, and to allow tiny house communities pursuant to a binding site plan. So the proposed revisions have to do with sort of 4 main parts. One of them is adding the International Residential Code Appendix Q to provide tiny house building standards. These little buildings are relatively new and there wasn't a way to review them for building code issues because they don't fit under like a travel trailer under that kind of review. And they also didn't fit neatly in with a stick-built building code. So a new building code was created for them. So this is providing for adopting that part of the code into your code. The second thing is we're proposing to add definitions of tiny house and tiny house with wheels into Title 20. Third thing is establishing that tiny houses or tiny houses with wheels, as they would be defined in that new definition, shall be allowed in the R3M residential manufactured home park district, where mobile home parks or RV parks are already established or could be established. And then the last thing would be to revise portions of the code in Title 20 as we've shown in your staff report. And that would be to establish the regulation of tiny houses and tiny house communities. So as you know, this is a legislative policy matter. We proposed these, or we processed these proposed amendments according to your code with ample public notice for various meetings. The Planning Commission held a legislative public hearing on the proposed changes in November. One person from the public asked questions. And there were no additional comments submitted or provided during the meeting or before it. And there were no comments received as of the date of the when the report was written or as of today. Planning Commission voted unanimously to adopt the findings contained in the staff report, and they forwarded a positive recommendation to you, the City Council, for approval of the proposed amendments via adoption of an ordinance. We've provided a suggested motion for you and a draft ordinance with the proposed code changes.
Does anyone have any questions? Anyone in the audience have questions? Mr. Rouse, you would like to speak? No? Okay. Okay. All right. I don't see anyone else that's requesting to speak. So we will close that public hearing now. Okay, then the next public hearing has to do with proposed adoption of the Benton City Municipal Code 2062 residential design standards. And Millyanne, are you going to be covering that one as well?
Yes.
Okay.
Madam Mayor, would you open the public hearing?
Yes, I will. Okay, the public hearing is now open.
Are you ready for me? Sorry, I didn't hear. Yes.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Yes,
Sorry, I was. So Nicole's going to get a PowerPoint going for me. So council went, you enacted your moratorium and then directed staff to draft up some residential design standards, which we did. And we took it through 2 workshops with the Planning Commission, or a workshop and then 2 public hearings, excuse me, get it straight. And then Planning Commission had certain items that they were really passionate about, and they spent a lot of time and energy and effort really working on the code and getting it to where they felt satisfied with it. And then eventually forwarded a positive recommendation to you for approval of the design standards. And so now I'll take you through the proposed standards through the PowerPoint. Okay, next slide, please. So this is a new chapter. And like I just said, we went through the whole process. You can go through that quickly. We went through SEPA and all the public noticing and notice to commerce whenever you adopt a whole new chapter. I think we need to back up a few slides if it will let you. We can start with roof pitch though. There we go. There we go. Yes, next. And you can skip to the next one. This just lists out all of the comprehensive or several comprehensive goals and strategies that you have in your comprehensive plan that lend.
Excuse
Lend
me, Millyanne, the slides are not moving.
Okay. If you go to the next one, Nicole. Do you see anything now?
I see a big orange, oh, now I do, now I do.
Okay. This is just to illustrate that your comprehensive plan supports design standards. You can go to the next slide. So this would apply to all newly constructed or newly placed dwellings in the R1, R2, and R3. Standards would not apply to multifamily dwellings with 3 or more units, and it would not apply to the R3M zone. The next public hearing that we have tonight is in regards to proposed changes to the R3 zone. And that is where we'll pick up with 3 or more units where design standards would apply to those. Also, these standards wouldn't apply to accessory or appurtenant structures, so not to a shed or a garage or a shop in the back of the lot, or to accessory dwelling units once those are allowed. Next slide, please. So what it does propose is a requirement for windows on the face of a structure. So the part of the structure that's facing the street with a minimum of 30 square feet of glazing. And if you don't, if a builder's not going to put that in, they have some options. They could do less than 30 square feet, but then they have to have a covered porch that has a minimum of a 4-foot overhang. So you can see some illustrations here or images here. The image on the left doesn't have 30 square feet or a 4-foot overhang. And then the other 2 images have either or both. And then you can see with the image on the far right there that the 30 square feet of glazing doesn't have to be all on the first level. It could be on multiple levels. It could be in side lights with the car, with the not the car, the door, or it could be, windows in the garage door. Next slide, please. This applies also to structures that face more than one street. So if you have a through lot that has street frontage on 2 sides, or if you have a corner lot such as this one, then one side of the building would be considered the primary facade, and that one would still be required to have 30 square feet. And then as in this situation right here with a corner lot, the other side would have to have a minimum of 16 square feet. So it'd still have to have a window. It would just be allowed to have a smaller window. So there would still be that element of eyes on the street. That's what we're getting at, is that you can be inside the house and see out to what's going on in the street. And then whoever is walking by also has something better than just a blank wall to look at. Next slide, please. So another standard is that all entry porches or landing areas have to be constructed as an integral part of the dwelling or as part of the house. So on the left, you can see that deck, that porch could just be pulled away and the house would remain. Whereas on the right, it's all integrated. The roof line over the porch is very similar to the roof line of the rest of the house. The porch rails are very similar, the trim, etc. It's integrated. Next slide, please. Eave overhangs would be required to be at least 12 inches overhanging. So on the left is an image where that's not 12 inches, and on the right, that's at least 12 inches. Next slide, please. So there's also a requirement for roof pitch. So for a standard pitched roof, it would have to be greater. It'd have to be a minimum of 412. So 412 and greater. You can see the image in the middle shows different pitches, and you can see a 112 is pretty flat. A 412 is a good pitch. It's a good steepness to it. So on the right there, you can see that is greater than or equal to 412. Next slide, please. It does not make it so that you can't have interesting or non-standard roof lines too. You don't have to just have the little hat on the house. You could have certain flat roofs or split roofs or shed roofs. Different kinds of pitches would be allowed. Next slide, please. There's a provision that there be no false or artificial dormers, except when those dormers include a window or an operable vent. So it could be a fake dormer that's not leading to anything, as long as it looks real, was what Planning Commission really wanted to get out of that. They didn't think that you should be allowed to just have a fake dormer for no reason. Next slide, please. There's a rule that the foundations must be certain materials, poured concrete, masonry block, or any industry standard equivalent building material. And that the dwelling has to be permanently connected to the foundation, and it has to meet all seismic and wind loading standards for the county. And then no more than 12 inches of foundation wall could be exposed on the walls facing the street. And so again, on the left, there's not a foundation. That's clearly not in Benton City. And on the right, there is at least, or there's less than 12 inches or equal to. Next slide, please. This slide is all about the rules, to illustrate the rules about quality materials. So siding, provisions, and trim. Just trying to get good quality materials so that you've got some longevity to the buildings and just some good aesthetics. Next slide, please. There's a rule about, so certain things, certain utility boxes and things like that, electric meters, need to be securely attached to an exterior side wall of the dwelling, not facing the street where the dwelling is addressed, unless it's infeasible. And then that would be up to the reviewer to potentially work out with the utility company that, you know, maybe there's some reason that it has to be on the front of the building, and then there would be sort of an exception for that. And then if there are any additions or other architectural features, those have to be designed and permanently connected to the dwelling. If they're intended to be connected, they have to be designed to be connected, so it's an integral part of the dwelling. Next slide, please.
We have a question from Mr. Rouse.
Would it be okay if I keep going through the staff report
Oh,
and then we
okay.
take
All right, we'll
questions?
take your question in a moment, Mr. Rouse.
So there, the planning commission was very passionate about the appearance of garages and had us add some language about garages. So what they came up with was that the attached garages should not be the prominent element of the portion of the dwelling facing the street. And this is in order to create a visual effect along the street that conveys the presence of homes and spaces for pedestrians, not merely parking garages. So there are some different ways to de-emphasize the face of any individual parking garage, i.e. the garage door. So I believe there are 5 different ways. So one is the garage could be provided with a side or a rear garage entry. It wouldn't have to be on the front. A second option is to locate the garage farther away from the front lot line than the remainder of the street facing facade. So you could see in that last image that most of the building, a good portion of the building was street forward and the garage was pushed back. The garage door was pushed back. Next slide, please. Another option is to locate the primary entrance closer to the front lot line. So that's similar to locating the whole of the building closer to the front lot line than the garage door, but this is just to say, bring the front door closer. And then another option is to reduce the width of the face of the garage so that it's not, so that it's less than 60% of the overall dwelling facade width. So you can see that little image with red there, the garages are more than 60% of the facade width, not the area, but the width. And then the image on the far right, you can see it's reduced there. So it is less than 60% estimating. And then the last option would be to provide a cantilever with living space that comes out over the garage. Next slide, please. So these are some benefits of design guidelines. I think that you're all familiar with that since you actually asked for them. And then next slide, please. And then this is our recommendation that you conclude the public hearing tonight and then adopt the ordinance that the draft ordinance that we provided for you. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Rouse, could you come up, please, and take a microphone if you had a question?
If you can't hear me, let me know, but I don't think I need a mic.
As long as it's recorded, I don't know if it'll be recorded without the microphone.
First, I need your name again, please.
Millie Ann.
And you live where?
I work for the city through a subcontracting company through AHBL.
So you do or you do not live in Benton City?
I don't know how that's relevant. What's your question about
Well,
the
because
design standards?
Most of us, and I'm assuming 95% of us, 99% of us, with the exception of the lawyer, live in Benton City. So whatever you propose and is approved will affect our lifestyle. I've been here a long time. I don't want you to affect my lifestyle. So my question is, what ultimate goal is all of this going to give those of us who live in Benton City?
What is the goal?
What benefit will those of us who live in Benton City get from these proposals?
That's something that I'm happy to answer, but I also think that that's something that maybe city council would like to
Right,
answer
and-
since
and
you
let me-
hired us to do this.
Let me take it from here. First of all, Mr. Rouse, I need you to state your name and your address for the record, please. And then I'll address your question.
Louis Stephen Rouse, Benton City, Washington, Demas Road, 99320.
Okay, thank you. We decided to have design standards because things were getting out of hand, things were not being built as we would like them to be,
Who's we?
the city council. So we implemented a moratorium on R2 and R3 building until we could get some reasonable standards in place so that we aren't just having willy-nilly houses going up anywhere, which is what's happening now. So that was the purpose. We wanted to have a design plan so that our city could be improved.
Okay, now you keep saying so that our city can be improved, so that things will be more uniform, and I'm not sure that we
Not
all want to
necessarily.
be uniform.
No, I don't think this makes it uniform. I think it gives us a wide range of designs and things that we can go by.
Well, for instance, if you look at the city of Richland, every block has a different housing design. And Richland is growing.
Mhm.
Richland is going to gobble Benton City up.
Or
No
West
matter what you
Richland.
do, unless you do it tomorrow. And they don't have these draconian rules and architectural designs. They put up houses.
Well, I do believe they have standards. Do you know for sure, Millian?
They do have some standards, and these standards were actually modeled on the standards that Pasco has in place right now.
Okay, so you're trying to make us look like Pasco then.
No, sir. We've adapted them. I said they are based on the standards that Pasco uses, but we've adapted them. And then we took them through your planning commission, several meetings through the planning commission, and who are representatives from the city of Benton City who gave their input, and then we changed what was written and adapted it to make sure that they were satisfied.
The dormer, no false dormers or phony dormers, whatever you want to call them, unless they have a window or a vent,
Mhm.
if I heard that correctly.
Yes,
So my window doesn't have to be a slider. It can just be a window in my phony dormer.
correct.
And is this? I guess my other question is. People that live in Benton City. Probably don't want to move into one of these. Approved dwellings. Because they're already in a dwelling and they're gonna stay where they are, or perhaps update their dwelling. So if I update my dwelling, I don't live in Benton City. I live across the river. If I update my dwelling, do I then have to update everything to the new rules?
No, it's
No.
only for newly constructed
New
buildings.
construction only.
New construction, thank you. So and then another question that I've had it for a long time, and it doesn't have to do with building structure. Do we have the infrastructure to go ahead with more housing development?
Can I answer that,
Do
Madam?
we have electricity? Do we have water? Do we have sewer?
I can, or
Um,
you can, yes.
That is a very good question, Mr. Rouse. I have continually asked that question. And the answer that I continue to get from our engineer is that we are not even at half capacity on our sewers. He has made a couple of recommendations of line upgrades that are being passed on to developers as they happen. The water system is capable of sustaining more as well. So that infrastructure is in place. The only question that we've been working on with the engineer as well is traffic flows. And according to the state standards, at this time, we only have one problematic intersection based on traffic counts. So that's something the council is going to address in the future. But currently, infrastructure can handle what we have, and it will handle the one or two developments that are sitting out there waiting to take hold.
And basically, we have approximately 9% of the city's land area that remains to be developed.
9%?
Everything else is full. There's only 2 or 3 big areas left that can be designed. So we want them to look nice as possible.
You know, that brings up another question, and if we're going to bring all of new construction up to standard, is the city going to bring their property on Main Street up to standard?
Well, we're trying on that one. You're talking about the
The old city hall?
old city hall. The outside is up to standards,
Well, I
but
can't live on the outside. I can't live-
that will be a discussion item for later, what we're going to do with that building. We haven't decided yet.
We're going to be discussing it tonight, reference our
Yeah.
budget.
Yeah.
So if you'd like to stick around for that, that should be an eventful discussion.
Anything
I
else?
think I'm good. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
We appreciate you, Steve. Thank you.
Okay. Are there any other questions on the design standards? Council will have a discussion later in the approval process. But I'm looking now for public input. Okay. Hearing none, we'll close this public hearing. Okay. The next legislative public hearing is the proposed revision of Benton City Municipal Code, Chapter 2024-R3, Residential High Density District. And I will now call that meeting to order. Okay. Are there any citizens in the room that would like to discuss the residential R3 design standards?
Do you need a staff report?
Pardon?
Do you need a
Yes.
staff report?
Yes,
Okay.
please.
Do you want that first or?
Yeah, go right ahead.
Oh, okay. So as we were drafting the design standards as requested, we were going through, because anytime you change the code, you need to look at the whole code and see if there are any other areas that would cause discrepancies. or disagreements between the code sections. And so we found in the R3 district that place, that nuanced place where the design standards could cover buildings that are less than 3 units, and the R3 could cover buildings, multifamily dwellings that are more than 3 units. So that's where this started, this proposed revision to R3. Started with adding the design standards to that section, and that's farther down in the code. And as we were going through it, we realized that there were some other areas that needed improving or were wrong or were not up to state law. And so you'll see that there were some other areas where we've suggested proposed changes. One of those is starting to allow single family residential in the R3 high residential area. And the thinking behind that was that you have a almost a whole street full of existing non-conforming situations that are existing single family houses, but the lots are zoned R3. So we thought of a remedy for that would be to add single family residential as a permitted use. Multifamily residential buildings did not have there weren't a lot of rules for them previously. And so we've added, or we're proposing to add, that multifamily residential buildings are allowed, provided that no individual structure can contain more than 8 dwelling units. And that when any building on a lot exceeds 30 feet in height, the entire project is subject to site plan review. And that's to give a little, so the reduction in the building to put a limit to the number of dwelling units, that doesn't mean that a site can only have 8 dwelling units. It means you'd have to have multiple buildings on the site if you've got the site capacity, the density allowance for that much density. It just reduces the bulk and scale of the buildings. So it brings it down so that the building can't exceed 8 dwelling units. It can't exceed a certain size. And then the site plan review, adding that in, gives the city more control, gives the city more of an ability to review what's there, to look at parking, to look at the layout. There was no site plan review previously for multifamily residential buildings. So there wasn't a lot of opportunity to review things like setbacks and the parking, where the parking goes and where the driveways go. We also propose eliminating the ability to have motels as a conditional use within the R3. That belongs better in a commercial district. And then we went through the development standards, tweaked those a little bit. And there was already an area of the code that talks about recreational areas being required. And so we fleshed that out. And I brought that to you in a workshop last month. And there was a lot of discussion about the recreational areas. And so I've provided a little more information, fleshed it out a little more. And you can see where it's highlighted now. So we've made it so that where 2 or more dwelling units are proposed per lot, there shall be provided 1 or more recreation and or open space areas. And then it goes from there. So it's to say you can have these passive open space areas, or you have to have active recreation areas. And that depends on your density. It depends on how many units you've got on your site. And then the rest of it is the design standards. And so for our 3 multifamily, the bulk of the design standards that are being required are building articulation and modulation. So instead of just having a blank wall facing the street, this is requiring some, we call it movement. It's requiring some depth, some dimension to the building to break up just that solid wall. Again, it makes it a more interesting view for people walking by or people riding by on their bicycles. It just makes it more aesthetically pleasing for your community. I think that's, try to just quickly hit on the highlights there. But I'll leave it at that.
So, can I ask a question?
I think so, sure.
So you said that if it goes above 8 units, then it goes to site review. Are we talking about building placement in that, or are we talking about somebody wanted to build a 5-story building and put 4 units per floor?
So I think I'm hearing two different things. So
Okay.
the 8 units requirement is that you can only have 8 units in a building. So you couldn't have 5 stories with 4 units each story, because that would be 20 units in a
Right.
building.
That's
So,
what I'm asking.
so that's not allowed. This is saying that you can have 8 units in the building. You could have 4 stories with 2 units on each floor, or whatever your configuration. If you want to have 20 units, you need to have multiple buildings on the site. And yes, a site plan review would look at the placement of the buildings and look at, how's the driveway flow going to happen? Where's the parking going to happen? Where's the recreation area going to go?
Which would keep the building smaller and more conducive to the town's environment.
Mhm.
Okay.
That was the idea. Yes.
Right. Okay. I just wanted clarification on that.
Okay, did you want to continue or?
I don't have anything else to say. There are a few other design review items in there, mostly similar to what was already proposed in the 2064 or 2062. And then there's information about the site plan approval and what that process would be. And that section is modeled after another section in Title 20 that has to do with site plan approval. And if that section is ever revised and approved in that part of Title 20, then this could be eliminated. This could be repealed. But we thought it was important to get it in now and to go ahead and have that piece of review for your multifamily units.
That's a very good point, and I'd like to reiterate that. Just because we've passed these design standards does not mean that we necessarily will lift the moratorium. The moratorium will be lifted when the rest of Part 20 is conformed to these standards. So if we were to issue them now, we would have inconsistencies and things within our code that are not jiving. So it will take us a little bit longer to conform the rest of Title 20. And then the design standards will be all completely approved in the code. And we will then lift the moratorium. Are there any questions from the public upon hearing the standards? Yes, Mr. Rouse.
Do I have to tell you who I am
No,
again?
we know who you are now. We knew before, but we needed to have it on record. Mr. Rouse is repeating from the last public hearing.
The building moratorium has not been lifted.
That's correct. It was just renewed for another 6 months. At our last meeting, because it was going to expire. And we aren't, as you see, we still have a little bit more to go. I don't think it'll be another 6 months, but I think it might be a month or so before we get all of this pulled together.
And this moratorium is so that we can come up to code or desires or whatever
But to
the
meet these
city
standards.
council
Right,
wishes our new development to be.
right, right.
Thank you.
Okay. Are there any other questions from the public? If not, I will close this hearing. Public hearing is closed. We will now move on to the legislative public hearing on the proposed 2022 comprehensive plan amendment docket and associated area-wide rezone. And this is Nicole Stickney
Yes.
from AHBL. Welcome.
Hi,
Thank you,
how are
Mayor.
you?
Good evening, council. My name is Nicole Stickney. I'm here from AHBL. I work with Millie Ann, and it's my turn now to present to you the staff report regarding the proposed 2022 comprehensive plan amendment and associated area-wide rezones. So you'll see in the staff report, there are a number of items that were docketed by council some time ago and referred over to the planning commission for further review and analysis. And during that intervening time, these matters were also reviewed for SEPA environmental review with the DNS issuance by the city, and also a 60-day review period with the state of Washington, and all of those items have been completed. I'll also highlight that all of the public notification requirements were met for this item. In terms of the proposed amendments, there are 5 different proposed changes to the city's land use map, which is contained in the comprehensive plan. And that map is used as a guide for which zoning decisions can be made. And then it's a policy document in that way. So there were 2 different items that concerned city-owned property, where there was a proposed change in one case from a residential and residential designation to an agricultural suburban district designation. And then the other was from residential to public reserve. And these are all shown in a sort of summary map in your packet. There was 2 other staff initiated requests that were based on communications we received from planning staff over at Benton County, where there were 2 areas of town, one single parcel and then a group of 3 parcels that had been mismapped previously by the county. And those, since they are within the city's UGA, they should be given land use designations by the city. So we're going from having a designation of nothing to an appropriate designation of what's on the land use map. And then finally, there was a private party application for a map change. This is perhaps the one that's most significant, 28.77 acres. This is on the northwest part of town. And this is where you will currently find that the existing land use map designates a commercial designation and there's a assigned zoning of C1 commercial district. And the Olson Family LLC has proposed for that piece of land to instead be designated as residential. And they are accordingly asking for an R3 residential high density district zoning designation. This is an area of town that's currently being used in agricultural production with orchard trees on it. And they're seeing that there's, I think, a greater need for residential development as opposed to commercial at that site. And so that is how they made that request. Moving on to the other requests that are part of this docket for this year, there was a proposed change to the UGA. I won't go into any more detail on that because that was withdrawn by the applicant, which was also Olson Family LLC. We received notice that a state law was actually supposed to be very narrowly construed, and so they'll have to wait to make a swap request as it is later on. So that aside, there were 3 text amendments that came forward, and they were all staff initiated. And a lot of this took a lot of close work alongside with the city engineer. So first, there was a host of changes proposed to the transportation element and goals and policies that are in the parks, recreation, and open space element. So this was changes to kind of modernize what the city had and update the information the city has in their comprehensive plan with regards to multimodal planning primarily. Moving on to the capital facilities element and the parks, recreation, and open space portion, there was some changes, red line changes proposed for that land that the city owns on the riverfront south of the wastewater treatment plant. Staff is preparing the site for a future riverfront city park, so some text changes to the comprehensive plan are appropriate for that. And then finally, to the transportation element itself, we reviewed this with the city engineer to make some updates based on current planning efforts, primarily adoption of the latest TIP, which is the Transportation Improvement Plan. So again, it's a whole host of changes that are proposed to the comprehensive plan. The the items I mentioned that are to the map, and then these text amendments that would also be made. These all went before the Planning Commission, and the Planning Commission did recommend approval with one catch. They did not make a recommendation on the portion which was pertaining to a group of 3 parcels on the west side, outside of city limits, but within the urban growth area. The landowner had requested that not be changed to residential land, but he wanted to see it become agricultural suburban on the land use map. We are recommending that does become residential designation, owing to the fact that it's not in the floodway. And the agricultural suburban designation is reserved for those types of situations. So again, the Planning Commission held back on that one part of it.
Which number is that?
But otherwise they approved everything. If that is CPA 2022 dash, let me see here. 03.
Okay. So, I hate to be that guy. You said it's along the Yakima River?
Not that one, no.
Okay. I just want to make sure. Have you actually been out to look at that piece of property?
Over here.
Yeah. Have you took a look at that actually?
No, I did not. We did a mapping and assessment and saw that it's not in the floodplain as far as we know.
No, it's not. I just, so having been grown up here, there's an old, irrigation drainage down through there.
Mhm.
With, essentially a little wetland
Mhm.
along it. And then it borders a cherry orchard on the other side.
So-
And backs up against residential with that wetland in between.
So what I can tell you is that any future development would be assessed in accordance with the city's critical areas ordinance. So it's not as though any wetland or other features like that would be overlooked. To the contrary, that would be part of any development scenario and looking at it. But in terms of a designation for a land use, it is appropriate still to give it a residential land use designation, as opposed to commercial or industrial or public reserve. Right? Those would be the other choices.
I wouldn't give them any of those actually, but go ahead.
Whereas agricultural suburban has traditionally been used, and I'm confident of this because I did a lot of research on this, for those areas that are, it's a signal that there's some floodway or floodplain issues that narrow the choices of development in those areas. So again, this is an area that was identified by Benton County where they said, oops, this has been in the city's UGA for a long time. It just wasn't showing up on maps that way. And as such, there needs to be a designation. This isn't going to change the gentleman's zoning or anything with permitting because he's not annexed into the city. He is outside. He's in Benton city limit, Benton County, unincorporated Benton County. So he'd go through the county for any permitting. And if he wanted any zoning changes, he would go to the county. We are merely saying that upon any future annexation, a residential land use is likely the most appropriate, which is really the lowest of intensity among those choices that I listed.
Yeah.
Does that kind of
I'm listening
make it
to you.
meld a little bit? Okay. All right.
Could I also ask, what about a park designation? Because that is a low-lying area and it does have water in it lots of the time.
It's privately owned. I wouldn't recommend a
Oh.
public designation. If later the city acquired it and planned to put a park on it, then I think you would want to do that. But I think it would maybe even be considered a taking to say that it has to be park if it's not publicly owned. I
Okay.
would not advise doing that. So that summarizes the report in terms of what I was going to highlight, but I'm happy to answer any questions or go over any process details that you might still be wondering about. Just to reconfirm, we are recommending approval of the 2 ordinances as presented. The first ordinance would be to change the comprehensive plan according to the tracked red line revisions for those text amendments, and then updating the map as shown in the packet. And then there's a second ordinance which would effectuate a area-wide rezone for 2 properties And that's one of the city-owned properties that's within city limits that would need a rezone. And then the other would be for that Olson Brothers request to go to R3 high-density residential. We'd want to make sure that we didn't leave that piece there with a commercial zoning designation if you're changing your land use map to residential. And that is what they've requested. Thank you.
Okay, JB is,
Wendy's got a question.
who does?
Wendy.
Okay,
She's got a hand up.
okay. Go ahead.
Wendy, go ahead. Okay. Hearing none?
No, she does not.
No.
Oh, okay. All right. Are there any questions from the public on this proposed comprehensive plan? Okay, hearing none, I will end this public hearing. Okay,
Is that all our public hearings?
that is our last public hearing. So now we can move into the approval of the former item 02, which is the ordinance on tiny homes. This would be the first reading of ordinance 1045 on tiny homes. And are there any questions from council?
We're just trying to find an ordinance. Or something to read.
I think that was in one of the first.
It's
pages.
on PDF 335. I'm just pulling it up too.
335.
PDF page 335, that's correct.
You'd think I'd get this down by now, huh? I move to approve on its first readings, ordinance 1045, an ordinance of the city of Benton City, Washington, allowing for tiny home communities pursuant to the binding site plan and further allowing tiny homes to be located within mobile home parks or recreational vehicle parks established on lands zoned R3M, residential manufactured home park district. Amending Benton City Municipal Code 15.08.010.A.3 to adopt International Residential Code Appendix Q.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Reed, aye.
Sandra, do I?
Wadsworth, aye.
Okay.
Okay, motion carries. The next item is the first reading of ordinance 1046, proposed adoption of Benton City Municipal Code Residential Design Standards. And I do have one plea again to urge the 512 pitch be incorporated as opposed to the 412. But I'm willing to hear discussion on that.
Madam Mayor, this is Councilwoman Funk. I was going back through my notes and looking at some additional pictures, and I would also be supportive of moving from the 412 pitch to the 512 pitch. I think the 512 pitch looks slightly better.
Okay. Anyone else?
I would be more inclined to stay with the 412 based on the fact that our residential snow load is not that great. The design difference is very minimal. And it gives greater flexibility to those people who are building rafters and such on their homes. Well, that's my 2 cents.
Jessica, did you have any?
I like the looks of the 512. I think it's definitely but I could probably go either way. But I think the 512, I think that we've had discussions on this in the past, and I think I was stuck with the 512 in the past too.
Mr. Reed?
I gotta agree with Mr. Sandretto on this. I had the same, after thinking about it, the same concept with the flexibility and not much of a difference in appearance.
Okay, so what do we do with a tie? Do we have,
Well, I guess it's whoever gets the motion first. Because one of us has to amend it, and one of us has to not, and then it's either gonna go to a tie, and then when it goes to a tie, then you're the deciding vote.
okay,
I move to, so does that mean I need to amend the motion? Or you have to make it like this and then have discussion and then request to amend it, correct?
You're gonna have to make the motion amending the roof pitch.
Okay, I make a motion to amend the roof pitch
from 412 to 512.
from 412 to 512.
Along with
As-
reading the rest of the action.
Okay, as stated in 20.62.02, at least that's the first place that it's stated. On its first reading of ordinance 1046, an ordinance of the city of Benton City, Washington, adopting Benton City Municipal Code, chapter 20.62, residential design standards.
Second.
Okay, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Wadsworth, aye.
Funk, aye.
Sandretto, no.
Reed, no.
Okay. Then I am able to give a tie-breaking vote at this point. Is that correct, Mr. Briggs?
We have 4 council members present tonight.
Yeah, two are up there.
That's right, because we're so late. That would be the case.
I
Yes.
can?
Yes.
Okay, then my vote would be for the 512 pitch. So that way the ordinance is amended, correct?
Amended, yes.
Amended. Okay, thank you. Motion carries. And that is the first vote I've ever given in my 7 years being the mayor. Okay. The next item is the first reading of ordinance 1047 on the proposed Benton City Municipal Code 2024 R3 Residential High Density District. And I also have some things to discuss on this one if we can have a discussion.
I move to approve on its first reading of ordinance 1047, an ordinance of the city of Benton City, Washington, revising Benton City Municipal Code, chapter 20.24, R3 Residential High Density District.
Okay. Do I have a second so we can discuss? Oh. I'd like to have a discussion, and usually we have to have 2 votes, right? We have to have
Just had a main motion on the table. So
I'll second it for discussion.
Okay. There are 2 things about this code that I would like to see changed. One of them is the lot width. Right now, it's set to 50 feet. And if we had a multifamily residence and I'm going to use my fourplex as an example. My lot is 75 feet wide, and the fourplex still has to be lengthwise in that. What I'm seeing is if we have a 50-foot wide piece, that if we have a big piece of land, we have developers with 50-foot lots and rows of fourplexes or duplexes, whatever, fourplexes it would have to be, I guess, or triplexes. And at my fourplex, at 75 feet, I have enough room for, I would say 10 or 15-foot lawn on the one side, the walkway and stairs that go up to the second story, and then about 30 foot of building and another 10 feet of behind it for access to the back. And I think that if you have a 50-foot wide lot, you would not be able to have much besides a 30-foot building. It would be very cramped. You'd be basically looking in somebody else's windows, I think. In addition to that, I would like to have us add a preference for these fourplexes to be facing the street when possible. Because they've done some beautiful illustrations in this on the types of facades and things that would look really nice. And I think it would be nice to have the fourplex there facing the street with parking behind or in front. My 75-foot lot allows 8 cars to be parked in one row and another 8 cars in another. And I know parking is not part of this issue tonight, but the way it is, because I would not like to see all of this extra parking put out on the streets. We had that problem on Bell, and we had an actual resident draw lines for front end pulling in sideways, or not sideways, but front end parking like on our streets. And we had to stop that. But there are many, many cars that are involved when you have that kind of a place. So I would urge that we increase the lot width to somewhere between 75 to 85. And also add that we would like to see these facing the street when possible. Otherwise, we're just looking at the ends of the fourplex. I think aesthetically, it would be an improvement.
Well, I think your design standards incorporate into the R3 require glazing forward. So I think you're already forcing a street view, or at least a better street view.
One window.
So I don't know
Yes.
that that needs to be put in there. My argument and rebuttal to your extending the lot width is that on a fourplex, you're right, that functions well, but if it's just a duplex,
Duplex comes under R2.
okay.
Yeah.
I thought they were under R3, but
No, they're not. Pardon?
okay. You can put duplexes in R3.
In an R2.
In an
R3.
That's an
R3.
accepted R3 use. Okay. But their design standards would fall under what's in R2, is that correct?
Under both R2, R3, our design standards cross, I believe, correct?
Well,
The design standards that for the last public hearing
Mm-hmm.
cover
R2.
everything that had in R1, R2, R3 that has fewer than 3 units or 3.
Millian, would you mind going to the mic?
She was just reaffirming that it does cover R1, R2, and R3.
Yes, it's divided by the units. So there's a separate design chapter, right, that covers up to 3 units. And then this covers more than that. Or do I have my numbers right?
Design standard 3 or more,
Yes. No, design standards were less.
3 or less.
Mhm.
Okay.
So a duplex is gonna be, it's gonna fall under the design standards chapter, but it's an allowed use in the R3.
So they gotta meet the thing, they gotta put windows forward. I mean, and they're a smaller unit typically. I don't know that you're gonna get it within 50 feet, but I think you have to at least allow for the possibility of something like that. When you start going and you're making a lot super wide, that's gonna limit a lot of our R3 locations that are small.
Well, the existing ones, I think this is for new. So I'm thinking with the new ones, we would be able to have them facing the street, have an alleyway behind, parking in the alleyways, and then have the front facing the street. It would look more like a residence.
I understand where you're going, I think though, but when you build it that big or make that lot requirement that big, those new places where we got R3 and they're trying to fill in,
They don't have to be as, no, well, I was thinking that the existing lots that we have now, if you're trying to infill, would be already there. They should be able to build something there, but it's going to be really, really tight. But I'm thinking when you go to a new, like, I'm thinking of all of these applications we've had for 129 small lots, 62 down here, which was dropped, but I think those, when you're planning the community, could be planned instead of having your 50 feet, having everything vertical. Why not do it this way as opposed to this way, facing the street? I think you could pretty much get the same amount of housing.
You're just wanting all the units to face the roadway is
Yeah.
what you're asking. And then, so you'd have your front unit and then a parking in between and then the next unit. Is that what you're,
Right.
Or
Or
fourplex
parking
or
and
bigger.
and then the
Fourplex
street,
or-
yeah,
to where when you drive by it, if I understand you correctly, you're not looking at the side of a building versus the front of the building.
right.
So it's street facing versus like just the end of like a fourplex or a.
And I think we could say preference for that. But on some of these existing lots, they won't be able to do that. I mean, that's for sure. So they would have to build them endwise. But I think if we're going into a new development of these things, we might as well maximize the beautiful standards that she's come up with and let them be seen.
Madam Mayor,
Yes,
I kind of want to add an opinion. In the event somebody say wants to do a fourplex in a square pattern, 2 units up front, 2 in the back, how is that going to affect having all units facing the street?
2 in the front and 2 in the back.
Yeah,
So he's saying like 2 duplex or 2 fourplexes up front and then.
no, a single fourplex,
Or a single fourplex.
single fourplex.
Yes.
Each corner has a living dwelling.
Where would the parking be?
Up front on the roadside with sidewalks going to the rear units. There's a few of them over in Kennewick and they don't look bad at all.
I'd have to see them, I guess. I just would like to be able to have as much facing the road as possible. I think there's always exceptions where they can't, and depending on the lot size, but I just want it aesthetically pleasing. I just don't feel like getting a row. I see the opportunity to just have these 50-foot wide lots with back-to-back fourplexes.
Can't handle parking. I mean, that would be my biggest concern, because the average family has roughly between 2 and 4 cars. And if the fourplexes in there.
Jessica, could you speak into the mic?
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm having a side conversation. I was just kind of talking to David here about if we're looking to do on-street parking, if our streets are wide enough and the ability to park, if an average family has, let's say, between 2 and 4 vehicles, would that affect parking on the street if we're asking, you know, a fourplex to park on city streets? And not have parking within that development, just relying on the street parking, that's all.
Yeah. That has been an issue.
'Cause I know-
Madam Mayor, may I have the floor?
Yes, you may.
Since this is the first reading, are we able to? What's the process? If it sounds like the discussion's really good, is there an opportunity to, or is it appropriate to consider approving the first reading and requesting AHBL provide maybe a couple more examples before it gets to the second reading, or?
I believe we can make changes at the second reading.
Or we have a choice to
We can
vote
make
this.
them now or make them next time.
What is your suggestion, Millyanne, on, is there something else that you could bring to us on having, I guess, a little bit better idea of, I guess, kind of what we're talking about?
Yes, so I would not recommend increasing the lot width requirement. You have many, many existing R3 zoned properties in the city that are 50 feet or less, or between 50 and 75. They're less than 75, certainly. And I saw several examples on the map view and on Google Street View of duplexes on 50-foot wide lots. So they do work on 50-foot wide lots. So I wouldn't recommend increasing the minimum lot width requirement. I think you're going to decrease a lot of flexibility. R3 is your only multifamily, your only high density zone. And it's really intended for these infill sites so that you can get more density in your city and provide sort of that, or not sort of, but to provide that missing middle housing, they call it, to provide more affordable housing or provide housing for people that don't want to buy a house even. You need to provide that as a city. So I strongly recommend against that. I don't know what kind of examples of wider lots I could provide for that. As far as adding something for a preference that the unit face the street, I think that that's something that we could add in. You do have the design standards in the R3 that are being proposed do speak to building articulation and modulation. And so it's not going to be just like just a blank wall that you're seeing. So you might see the end of the unit, but it's not just going to be a blank wall. It has to be modulated. So it'll have to have a porch on it, or it will have to have some protruding windows like bay windows or a dormer facing the street or a variety of roof forms. There would have to be something to make it more interesting than just a blank wall on the end. Other than that, I'm not sure like what kind of
I
examples.
guess I'm thinking of like, if you go out in Pasco, I know it's not Benton City, but out in Pasco, you know, where all the schools were built out there off of Standard you look at the backside of those apartments and they have different pitch lines. It's their backyard technically. And then when you drive down, you have the two apartment buildings facing each other. And that's where everybody drives and parks and things like that. It's not on a main street. That's what I was just trying to get to, is like, if there's parking, is it going to be, if they're facing out on the main street, are we going to look to do the parking on the main street, or is there going to be internal parking where it's like their own little road that goes down to the fourplexes?
Right. I see what you're saying. So in a different code of your chapter, there are parking requirements, right?
Okay.
You know that. And so for each unit is required a minimum number. I don't know the number off the top of my head, but I also think that it has to do with the number of bedrooms. Does anybody know? Do you know the parking requirements off the top of your head? think it has to do, sorry, with
It's okay.
with bedrooms. And so each unit has to have, let's say, a minimum of 2 parking spaces. So then it's up to the developer of the property, the builder of the building to figure out where the parking's going to go. And that has to be contained on the site.
Okay.
And that's something that would be checked through the site plan application process, that the reviewer would look to make sure that the number of parking spaces are provided and that there's adequate access to the parking spaces and there's backing room in and out. Like those are all code provisions that are already in
Okay.
there. So there would be that requirement. There would be that check and balance for the parking.
Cause I'm just trying to think if there's certain areas that can't allow all the development to be facing a certain street. Would they be able to like flip them to where they faced each other and drove down and have the backsides facing the streets versus the front? That's all I'm just trying to think of, like some different developments that I've been through. And even though the backside is facing like a main street, it's still a pleasing at the eye, when you look at them, they have the different pitch lines, they have the little porches out back, they have a beautiful brick wall, so you can't technically see into their backyards, but like the different colors, so you can see the different.
Yeah.
housing.
And I think that you would find that you'll achieve all of that with the modulation
Okay.
requirements. It's not going to be
Just the front.
a blank wall.
It will have to have something on the. Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Okay. So I guess we can decide if we want to add a preference for street side or what at the next reading, if you want to go ahead and approve this now. And if we can come up with some wording that would help us feel comfortable that we're not going to be inundated by on-street parking and on narrow streets. And that we have plenty of space between these buildings. That would be something I would like to hear.
Is that another question? Because there is there are always building code requirements for space between buildings, but there's also something that was added. We're proposing to add to, where did it go? To the R3 section. Structure separation on lots containing more than one structure. There should be a distance of not less than 10 feet between all buildings, including accessory buildings. So that's
Yeah.
something that we proposed to be
I know.
added. And
10
parking
feet.
really, like, I want to try to remove that. I don't want to call it a distraction, but that's something that the builder has to figure out. They have to provide a minimum amount of parking on site.
Okay.
Like you can rest assured, they have to provide that.
But right now it's only 2 per unit.
With no guest parking. And so I know it's a distraction, but it's actually come up in other meetings recently that we've had.
It has, and I don't want to discourage you from thinking about that. It's certainly an important aspect of your city. But take notes and remember those things when the parking code section comes up for discussion.
So it's in two different, this doesn't.
In two
really-
different
okay.
sections.
Yep, got it.
Yeah.
So, so there would be a minimum distance of 20 feet between 2 buildings, which is probably about the size of this room. And you'd have to
10
have your
feet.
walkways.
10
or
feet.
whatever. Well, 10 feet per each one from from between the buildings. So that's even half the size of this room. That's awfully close.
But it would depend on the design, the layout of the buildings and the design of the buildings. If you've got 2 different buildings facing each other, you'd have to have enough. There are parking aisle requirements. So I know this is not Seattle, don't like throw things at me, but in Seattle, there are townhouse developments happening all over the city. And so you'll have 3 or 4 townhouse developments, a 4-plex, let's say 2 4-plexes facing each other, and they each have garages along, and you enter a driveway, a central driveway, and drive down the middle. And then there are garages on each side underneath the townhouse. And the distance from the face of the garage to the face of the garage, there's a minimum for that. There's a minimum for that in your code. It's the maneuvering distance. It's the backing distance for backing out of your garage and getting into your garage. And then there's an aisle width. So all of that determines how far away those buildings have to be. You're not going to be allowed, a person is not going to be allowed to have a 10-foot wide distance and use that to get into both buildings for their cars. It's not physically possible.
Yeah, I imagine there has to be space for fire trucks or on some of these.
Generally at the
Somehow.
street, yeah, and depending on how big the development is.
Okay, council, what do you want to do?
It's your call. It's already got a second, so you gotta call the vote.
Well, let's, do I have a motion? And then we can decide if we want to change it between the first reading and the second reading. So,
Already done.
It's already a motion. It's already been seconded.
oh,
say aye.
okay. All right. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
You gonna go again?
Sandra, aye.
Wadsworth, aye.
Reed, aye.
Okay, motion carries. Okay. Then the next one is the comprehensive plan amendment and docket.
I move to approve on its first reading ordinance 1048 and ordinance of Benton, City of Benton, City, Washington, 2022 comprehensive plan amendment docket.
Second.
Okay.
Discussion.
Okay,
This is gonna probably go to Miss Nicole on the question. So I have particular interest in that 2022-03 just because of where it's located and what its function is. If we approve that as a residential change, the county's not going to change on that gentleman as far as what he's required to do there, is he?
No, I don't expect so, no.
Okay.
It's really just kind of a procedural or housekeeping item, because technically the city has put forth land use designations into the entire urban growth area. And that, now that we've discovered that that is in fact in the UGA according to Benton County, I don't know why there was ever any discrepancy, but there was apparently. There needs to be a land use designation. And again, that is like the least intense that you could assign being residential. And I don't recall what his zoning is. We didn't mark it down because it's assigned by the county. We didn't think that it was relevant, but I would assume that there wouldn't be a conflict.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's all one question I had.
Thank you.
is there anything additional, Mr. Sandra?
Nope, that's it.
Okay, are we ready for the vote? All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Sandra, aye.
Wadsworth, aye.
Reed, aye.
Okay, motion carries. All right, the last item is the first reading of ordinance 1049, area-wide rezone.
All right, I'll stamp my name on this one too. I move to approve on its first reading ordinance 1049, the ordinance of the City of Benton, City, Washington, for an area-wide rezone.
Second.
Okay, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Sandra, aye.
Wadsworth, aye.
Reed, aye.
Okay, motion carries. Okay, at this point, we can go into the discussion items or we can take a short break. I would prefer to take a short break.
5 minutes, okay, sounds good.
All right, 5-minute break, please. Do you know what it is? I'm gonna have it. All right, can you text me? Thank you. Pass it to me, please.
So discussion item, Jose, did you want to come up to the mic and talk about
Yeah.
these things?
Just put it back into meeting.
Are we,
Started
Being-
recording, yep,
you can start recording.
he already did.
Already did. Okay, thank you. We're reconvening the city council meeting after a short break. So the first items that we're discussing, the first one is going to be estimate of cost to purchase a new street sweeper, and that's Jose Berrigan.
So, give some copies to the council. I'm not sure if everybody got a copy, but hopefully after this meeting, everybody will get one. So we got 3 different options from 2 different companies. I've added quotes for each truck, and then they do have financing available where you could even defer payments for a year. So there's definitely different options. Just a little bit of a background. We had an interlocal agreement with the city of West Richland since about the time I started working here, up until last year, where they don't have the enough manpower to continue providing street sweeping services to us. So I've been working with the city of Prosser. They just bought a new street sweeper. Unfortunately, they're not interested in an interlocal agreement with us. I tried Benton County. They don't currently own a street sweeper. They occasionally rent one, but they're not interested in any type of a interlocal agreement with the city. And that's kind of where I'm at. So I just wanted to bring some numbers to council. I know, but budget's in process, so, yeah.
So out of all 3 of them that you've submitted, which one is something that you guys are more desiring over?
Right now, I wouldn't be able to answer that question
Okay.
because I would like to demo the trucks before we decide to go either route. There's just some different, some different pros and cons to each truck, and the A4 storm sweeper is what the city of Yakima currently uses, the city of Titan. A lot of cities down the valley currently use that model. It is, of course, the most expensive model. But what their finance program offers is just being able to defer the payments for a year. That helps with that. And they offer, anywhere from 3-year, 5-year, and 7-year terms. So, and then the other 2 quotes I got were from 1.7. That's a company based out of the west side, and they get a lot of used sweepers as well. That might be another possibility. It's hard to say what kind of condition you'll get something that's used, but that's another possibility. This company 1.7 over in the west side offers they do a rental service once a month, but they charge $10,500 a month to rent one. Yeah, it's ridiculous. So I think if even just I think our payment, if we decide to do something like this sometime in the future, would at a 7-year term probably be at $3,000 a month. So yeah.
So my question here on both of these ones that you've submitted, there's about a $12,000 difference, but it looks like both of them are the A4 Storm. Do you know right offhand what the difference is?
Just more features.
Okay.
It just has cameras. It has certain features. It has extra brooms. It has, I think it comes with a stainless steel debris canister. Yeah, I think that's what it was. Just, I think the $12,000 difference is a fully loaded version of that sweeper with all the bells and whistles.
So for the other council members, the first bid or one of the bids is 188,545, it looks like. And then we have one for 200,358.23 and one for 212,523.90.
So, unless the other members have a question, this is something that you are looking to get when?
Well, I mean, just based on budget, maybe we can kind of get a better idea of when something like this, as far as purchasing one, would be, ideal. I mean, the sooner the better. I mean, because I haven't been able to find.
Just gonna say,
to
do you know
rent
if they're on back order and what their back order log is?
one.
So if we were to order one, let's say today, is it gonna be 6 months? Is it 9 months out? Is it a year out?
The Victory Sweeper, the Mark III, they're actually getting one next week, and the sales rep is coming to demo it on Tuesday.
Coming down
this-
here to demo it?
Yeah, weather permitting,
Right.
and of course, but we're gonna demo it and see what we think. And so that one's available. He thinks if depending on what route we decide to go, it'll probably be gone by spring, but he's anticipating getting another one by then as well. They go pretty quick. And then as far as the A4 Storm, I believe he said he was anticipating getting a fully loaded truck by springtime.
And where is that coming out of? Is it
I
on the other
I think it's from the west side.
west side too?
Yeah.
Okay.
So for my fellow council members, I think we have to look at budgeting somewhere around 188,000 to 212,000
These probably don't include tax.
with tax.
What's that?
So we're gonna have to see if that money is available in the budget. If not, we'll have to think of a plan. Okay.
May I, this is Councilwoman Funk, may I make a comment real quick?
Yes, you may.
Okay, so thank you, Jose, for presenting the information and getting it, and thank you for Jessica, Sandretto, all your good comments. So one of the reasons, I don't know if this is exactly why this came up again, but street sweepers has come up a couple of times. And so when we think about the cost of $3,000 a month over 12 months and something we can afford, of course, we have to work to be fiscally responsible. But also when we think about meeting with Representative Rude and a Washington State capital budget request, based on, I'm not sure if this is something that would be high on Representative Rude's list to sponsor, but when we look through other cities and type of things, type of requests that they've submitted for capital projects, something like a street sweeper is definitely something that, has come up on lists. So I guess the question would be, as we continue to work through the budget, if the city was willing to invest over time on a 7-year plan to get a street sweeper through financing, but at the same time work to see if we were able to get that on a Washington State capital budget request, which I think we'll have more information on in the next couple of weeks, but not have a definitive answer until the spring, even if that was something we could put on a list. Would council entertain that as something that would be worth making a request for?
I think it'd be great if we can reach out and see if we can get some help with this. As sooner would be better, because obviously it would be nice to get one for the spring so we can get out there and get the streets cleaned. My other question would be on the financing aspect of it, the interest rates and stuff like that. Would that be a good resources of taxpayer money versus just paying for it up front versus paying an interest over 7 years or 5 years on a loan? That would just curiosity. That's all.
I could get some more numbers as far as interest rates go. Like I said, I had a couple days to put this together. I tried my best. But I'll definitely get some more information. I'll probably could get it ready for the next workshop.
Perfect. And I think maybe following up with Sarah, see if we can reach out to something to maybe get sponsored or the ability to.
And I think we'll know more during that meeting that I mentioned at the beginning on December 19th, Monday, December 19th at 2:30 PM. We should have a better indication of what the application looks like and also the representative's willingness to sponsor something for us and what you'd be most inclined to take forward.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor?
Thank you.
Thank you, Jose.
We have a question.
Oh. Mr.
I
Rouse.
don't know where we've been with this street sweeper thing, but as many military bases as we have in the state of Washington, I don't know if they ever access one of those things or not, but the fire department gets a lot of excess equipment from the military.
GSA.
And if you haven't touched that base, do it tomorrow.
That's a good idea. I don't think we have looked at GSA sales.
I'm not saying.
Yeah.
But I sure wouldn't,
Yeah,
I sure wouldn't buy one without looking.
right. The problem that we've run into is that with all of these old ones, you can't replace the parts. So perhaps the military has better source. Okay, thank you for the suggestion.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Okay.
Okay, my name is on this, but actually this was a request by Mr. Sandretto to have the, oh no, this is not that one. Sorry, I skipped one. This is the annexation piece. Yes, I think you requested this one as well.
I did, but you said you were gonna take it.
So I guess basically we have an area that belongs to BLM on the south side of I-82, which is currently annexed into the city. And we do not get any revenue from that land. And it has been suggested that we de-annex that and free up that acreage so that we could take on other areas to annex. So other than that, I don't know any more about it. Perhaps we should have had Millie Ann. They were the ones that were suggesting that we do that.
Okay.
Or our new planner when we get her contract awarded.
I do know that one of the things we need to do is look at de-annexing that piece that as we discussed,
The mining,
yeah, that the asphalt company is now taking charge of. Because there's nothing that we're ever going to do with that.
that's right.
We don't have any, as far as I know, any municipal code on governance of that. As far as any of those pieces. And I think it would be better suited to annex properties that we can build on, either commercial or residential.
I agree 100%.
So.
So would you like me to take some action to start that?
We need to figure out what we need to do to make that happen. Yeah, so.
Okay, I'll figure out a path forward.
We also need to figure out how much of that land they actually took. From just ballparking, it looks like probably 50 to 100 acres.
Yeah, might be. I
So
don't know if it's quite that much.
it looks like a lot.
Because the whole thing is 200 acres, 220 acres,
That we have.
that whole piece, yeah.
I thought it was more. I thought it was like, oh, because it goes all the way to the top of the hill.
Yeah, I think it's probably maybe 50 to 75 at most, maybe.
Yeah,
That's undergoing.
It's still
the
a
mining.
chunk that we can reallocate somewhere else.
Yeah,
Um,
the whole piece that's belongs to the mining thing includes the gravel quarry now and everything. That whole piece should be de-annexed.
Well, I know the quarry was outside the city prior to their expansion. And their expansion is pretty significant. So we can either utilize that to continue further along that direction if we can, or we can take some stuff on the south side. If it's available, we don't have to
Yeah, that would be a good thing to see where we should go looking for more properties. I know we have done some annexation on the north side.
Right. And that's another thing we need to start, and I assume this is a Millie Ann thing too, but I know we don't have them really as a resource right now, but we need to look at what we've used of our UGA, because that'll allow us to annex more properties outside or expand our UGA. So we need to look at all of that.
Has the new planning company came back, Mayor Lehman, and signed the contract that council approved?
The planning company sent me a draft proposal a week ago Monday, and I sent it to Mr. Briggs. I don't know where you stand with that, Mr. Briggs.
What one is this again?
The planner contract.
I don't recall seeing a planner contract.
I double checked. I did send it to you a week ago on Monday.
Email, but
Okay, I'll
but
send
I
it.
haven't had a chance to review
Okay,
yet.
okay.
And I would just note with respect to the de-annexation process, while it's relatively easy property in the city, it's relatively difficult to de-annex property from the city.
To Deanne?
Excuse me, Craig, could you speak into the mic?
Yeah,
I was just saying that while it's relatively easy to annex property into the city, it's difficult to de-annex.
is it?
Yes, it requires a 60% vote of the public,
Oh, really?
whether it's and it can be initiated by either a petition of the 10% of the landowners, which sounds like maybe in this case BLM was the individual who owns it, so maybe if they petition the city, or if the city itself passed a resolution. Of course, if we went that route, we would fit the bill for the cost of the election. So it's not as straightforward as just wanting to do it. It would require a vote of the people in a significant majority, super
So-
majority.
We need to figure it out, and then
Right.
if people would vote, if you explain it, they would vote to de-annex it. There's no benefit to us as a city by keeping that as part of the city at this point. So. But we just need to look into what our
We'll
options
look
are.
into it. I'll discuss it further with Craig. Okay. Anything else?
Nope, I'm ready to go on to 3.
Okay, we'll go on to 3. And that does have your name on it.
It does. Somebody loaded me up on it, but they were nice enough to give me all the information.
That's good.
So we discussed at our budget workshop, outstanding loans the city has. And if we could possibly pay any of them off. So we've got 3 loans that are above 200,000. I don't think those are things that we're gonna go after.
Has that been handed out to council?
No, it was just handed to me so that I can discuss it here.
Oh, okay. I'd
those-
like to see a copy of it.
Okay, those loans are on the solar project, the wastewater treatment plant construction, and a drinking water project. The Department of Health. But there is a water quality project, so council can think about this for our next budget planning meeting. That has a balance left on it of about $27,261. And at our current payment structure, that's 5 years of paying on that loan. So I would suggest that we think about paying it off and freeing up that capital. So that would take care of 3. And then you can take a look at the list.
Yeah, I would like to see that.
So if there's no further questions, I'll move on to number 4. If you don't mind.
Okay.
And I don't know how I got on this one, other than I said that I thought we needed to bring all these questions to council members. But I'll take it.
Okay,
So the first one's a community center kitchen upgrade. And the mayor discussed, whether or not we wanted to put any money towards expanding the kitchen, is that correct?
Well,
And walling in,
just kind of reorganizing it and getting some new furnishings in there. I don't know, it would have to be designed.
well, I think you said you wanted to push the wall
Well,
out
they
now.
talked about moving the wall, the counter, but the more I think about it, you want to have some counter space by your stove. So I
Right.
think it needs some thought. But it's definitely crowded back there. It needs some better appliances. We got the new stove now, so that's done. And I think they need a new microwave and some mats on the floor. And I don't know the situation of the refrigerators, but I know they wanted an additional refrigerator down there.
And the additional refrigerator is just to store stuff for each event. Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah.
So I guess the question to council members on item A is to think about what, if anything, we would want to put towards that. Then we'll go into the riverfront park.
Well, can we stay on that one for a minute? Because I would like to raise the whole issue of adding to it so that we could have classrooms. Because now that we're bringing Wi-Fi over there, we only have the one big room that we can use. And if we could extend out and add a few classrooms on the one side, then we could have different classes going on for different things.
You did mention that you wanted to box in the overhang area, is that
Yeah,
correct?
kind of that area, maybe create a couple of additional classrooms.
And I guess from my standpoint, if you were gonna add on to the building, I would just add on to the backside.
I don't think there's enough space and the sewer line runs through there. That's what you mean well, then they have the wall on the back,
No, this
but the
side,
street side.
yeah, towards Dale.
Yeah, that's where the sewer line runs, I was told, so that we couldn't build back there.
Is there any other council discussion on thought
I
process?
guess my suggestion would be is maybe having some ideas put out there that we can take a look and see some different quotes if we want to add classrooms and how many square feet it would add and how much it would cost along with extending and upgrading the kitchen.
So this really goes to if we want to put any money into having somebody look into that.
Yep.
So,
Yeah.
how much money?
Currently on page 15, there's $14,000 in the capital budget for 2023 and 2024 for community center furnishings. And I think that's the line item that triggered, bringing this to council for discussion.
Right.
Do we want to?
I think our capital budget triggered all this discussion. because
Yes.
It all has double dollar figures. So, I appreciate that insight. But I think what we really need to decide is how much money we want to put towards investigating expansion, kitchen renovations, and all of that, and if we can find it in the budget to do so.
Okay,
So.
I guess I could get various contractors to give me bids.
You could, or at
if I
least
had
an
some
estimate,
general idea, yeah.
kind of
that's
an
nice.
idea, or even Alan.
Guess
to
that's
say,
where I was looking at, is if we could just get a couple of different ideas of what we're looking at, then we can either move forward or come up with the ability to come up with some funds to do what we'd like to do in the community center.
Okay,
Well, and the reason it's really imperative that we decide on a dollar figure is because we have to set that budget in the next week or two. So if we want to outlay $14,000 or $15,000 in the budget for investigation of that expansion. We need to make that decision at that workshop coming up.
Okay,
So think about that.
okay.
I guess I get the next one too, the riverfront park improvements. So what was the dollar figure?
On page 15, we have a placeholder of 50,000 for 2023 and 2024, and the suggestion and note that was put in was to review it in January. Because it's probably part of a bigger project that can't easily be sorted out, and the reality is there'll be some work done in 2023, but the dollars on a longer term basis for the development of that area and that project overall could be a whole separate workshop or 2 workshops probably for council.
Okay, and I think there was also a question about the road and
Yeah.
what kind of,
For the grant, for the $2 million grant.
Well,
Yeah.
so there's a tie into the BF cog walking trail, current walking trail to the train bridge, some other projects that we have in flight, and then the $2 million federal appropriation, which Benton City is still in the running for. And the fact that, should we be awarded the $2 million, we'll definitely need to demonstrate, our commitment, not in a 2-year budget, but over a period of time, maybe till 2026 or 2027, to be determined, but not forever, where the city is making a commitment and will also be pursuing other grants and funding sources for significant dollars to work on that project.
Yeah, we need to make up something like $650,000.
all right,
And I was thinking the development of the road, Dale Avenue that goes into the park might be a significant chunk of that if we could count that as park development.
And we have about 650,000 of old we need to capture, and another almost 800 of future planning that we said we'd commit to for development towards that. Again, over multiple years and through different projects.
so
To be
again,
determined.
I think the council as a whole needs to think about what kind of dollars we want to submit to that. Right now, we've got $100,000 over the next 2 years planned in the budget. I know RCO's got some requirements on us for some development, and we're kind of behind the ball on that, aren't we?
And we can't reapply for the RCO next grant until 2024.
Right, but our first grant, we had some development requirements, and I think we had to put certain 14 or 15,000 into that or something.
That's for the skate park?
No, for that riverfront park.
Oh,
There was a development requirement after purchase. We had to do some improvements
think we
within
were
2
gonna do
years.
I think that's what we were thinking.
Okay, well, we need to put some money towards doing that and get that covered so that we don't have any
Okay.
issues with RCO.
All right.
So council, think about that for the next workshop. And then the big discussion item that I'm sure some folks would like to talk about is see what to do with 708 9th Street, the City Hall building. And I'll stick my nose out because I've been the unpopular guy on this one from day one. Sell it, get rid of it, get it out of the city's coffers. And the city needs to make a cognitive plan, whether that be through a local funding source, through the local grant system, or whatever, to build a new city hall. We have property, we should utilize it. That's my 2 cents on that.
I'd have to go with David on that one. I think just having a vacant building sitting downtown that is not usable for us right now and doesn't tend to seem to be usable for the future. And then us just renting and throwing our taxpayers' money away on a rental building where we have property and we're able to build something that's more permanent and something that would probably fit us better as a city hall. I think I am definitely in favor of that.
As a point of clarification, where's the land that we have now, David?
It's next to the city library.
Okay, that's what I thought. Okay.
I think we'd have to have a vote of the people if they want to spend that kind of money to develop a new city hall.
As long as we have the capital and capability, we can loan through the local loan program. And this is what I said, the city needs a plan. And we talked about this before of saving $100,000 to $200,000 a year. From day one, we would have over $1.5 million now. And we'd have it half paid off. But we haven't implemented that type of planning. So that's what I'm saying. We can plan to make this happen in 2 or 3 years. The local loan program through the state will loan you up to whatever you need. It's got a 7 to 10 year payback, I think, on something that large, because I had Miss Haig look into it years ago. And they loaned you the money at prime rate. So we could facilitate a building. We have architectural plans in the back somewhere. It's already been planned. We'd probably have to revamp it, but it's better to invest $2 million into something as opposed to 100 or another $1 million into that building and have still the same problems or even worse problems. And you only get 10 years, 20 years out of that building.
So I'm thinking that a new building will cost somewhere around $10 million. And I don't understand why that would not have to go to the people for a vote.
The last quote that we got
Was $3,000 or something,
for-
3
for
million.
3 million for a new building.
But that was,
10 years ago, you're right. But that still is not gonna be $10 million.
I don't know, Prosser's came out 20 million.
There's this pretty large endeavor too, compared to what we were looking at.
I think it's something that we should at least dig into and see what we can come up with. I really think moving forward and not just letting a building sit downtown vacant and us continue to throw taxpayer money away on rent. I think moving forward on something that we could own and be up to date and be able to hold the community if they want to come into council meetings, there's enough room. And
Yeah, I wonder if, I haven't seen those plans in a long time. I don't know what the size of the offices were, how many offices. I know it was just the upper floor and the lower floor was for something.
It was vacant
else
for
and-
a community center
Yeah,
originally, but that doesn't mean it can't be office space today. It doesn't mean we have to go with those plans either.
yeah.
So
Good.
I think that there's a call to action that we need the mayor to lead for us, which is to locate the plans and let's get a new quote going. What is the requirement to need a vote of the people, Craig? How does that work?
No requirement for vote of the people
No.
outside of City Hall,
Okay,
not due to the dollar figure or anything.
so we've put aside $200,000, towards this project so far.
It'd
There's
be a public works project, so we'd have certain procurement processes we'd have to go through. And certain, bidding requirements with respect to, who we awarded that contract to. That wouldn't be something that would, we would need the public's input on. Of course, it would implicate a land use decision, so at some point there'd be notice to the public could come in and, at some point there'd probably be a hearing on that. Under our LUPA, so, this would be something where the public would get involved in the procedural aspects with respect to any, use of that property. But short of that, it wouldn't be conditioned on a vote of the citizens in Benton City.
Now, you could do a vote and you could do a bond if
Right.
that's what you wanted to do. But I think the dollar figure is low enough. Our budget is decent enough that if we saved up for 4 or 5 years, we could pay half the building off,
Right.
loan out the rest, take another 4 to 5 years to pay off the building. That's just my opinion on it.
Also selling the old building.
Yes, well, selling the old building and use those funds to help facilitate what we do on the new building.
So I think there's another consideration. Everything you're saying makes a lot of sense. I think in the short term, as we're thinking about the community center, as we're thinking about investing in people, as we're thinking about how we get there and the growth of the city, and the space that we have now, is that space going to continue to serve us, or at the point in time next year where we have a planner full-time on staff and we don't have a place for them to sit and things get more crowded, what type of planning or thinking are we going to do around that? Is there an investment we need to make in the community center? Is there investment we need to do for something else as we think about these longer plans, so that we can be succinct and proactive and help things run well?
Well, I totally agree with you. There has to be pre-planning, and this was my argument 6 years ago, is that we should have been planning at that point moving forward to make this a reality. If we would have budgeted 200,000 a year for the last 6 years, we'd have that building paid off almost. You see where I'm going? This is where we need to have a plan. Between the council and the mayor, last time we were all fighting over this thing. And it doesn't need to be a fight. It needs to be a group effort to move the city forward.
So I think the way we accomplish that is the request to the mayor's office to locate the plans and revisit if the quote was from 10 years ago, get a new quote, figure out how much money we can get for the old building and what things would look like for space. Where were you planning to put these people that we're going to hire? Right. And that should be something that I think we work to sort out during Q1 of 2023. It sounds like what I'm hearing is, Bill, we haven't heard from you. Maybe we should hear from you a bit more first, but it sounds like the other three of us are pretty supportive of this direction, not to have it be a fight, but to definitely make a plan to move forward, whatever that plan is.
Yep, I fully agree. I think this has kind of been a couple of years in the making. I just think we need to get a plan together and implement it. But I also do agree the old city hall is probably not our best option. And I agree with Mr. Sandretto. We need to move on from that.
So the reason this comes up is there was more funding in the budget, I believe, or questions about funding for feasibility on what to do with that. So council members, I urge you to think between now and the next budget meeting, what we want to do moving forward with that building.
I would like to see it be appraised and see what we can get out of the market.
Okay.
And I'd like to evaluate the old plans to see if they're sufficient now and the
Mhm.
stay.
That's fair.
Yeah.
So can we have that be a Q1 action item? There's been money in the budget in 2022 that wasn't spent for feasibility. Page 11 has 5,000 in 2023 and 2024 has the same amount just because they've been rolled over. I believe for 2022, I don't have the figure in front of me from the budget, but I think we put $15,000 there. I know this is a discussion item, so we can't take action, but I'd like to see a plan come together with those options. I'd like to see the options presented during Q1 of 2023, like the feasibility completed.
I second that.
Yep, I agree.
But we need to make sure we have funding. I don't know that those funds rolled over every year. I think
They-
those are just placeholders.
They don't, and so we probably need to make sure that it does roll over, so there's money to do it. The other one that's not on here is about the library improvements. Is that okay if we talk about that real quick?
Oh, yes. That should have been added as a D item, but that needs to be done. What is it, painting and?
I think some of the fascia or soffits needed, maybe the boards are gonna have to be replaced.
Mhm.
They did need paint, but I think by now they may need to be replaced because it's been about 4 years since they requested it be done.
Do we need to have somebody quote that or do we?
I
need
think
to-
Kyle did get quotes, but we'll probably have to do it again.
I'm good with moving forward on getting some quotes to get that fixed before it gets any worse.
What, so Sarah, that was a budget item you said?
Well, it was a discussion item, but we didn't have an item in the, like a line in the capital improvement for it. That I could find, and so when we have the section for library, we had some, just operating expense money that we spent that's pretty low. And we brought up library improvements because we're so fortunate in Benton City to have a Mid-Columbia Library branch and just want to make sure we're doing the maintenance. So right now, there's not a budgeted line item for it. And it would be great to, add that in. And if we don't know how much it might cost, I would still try to propose adding a dollar amount for 2023 and then work to get quotes.
There is a line item for repair or maintenance by others.
Okay.
We probably need to think of a dollar figure to throw at that. Do you know if you got the quote from previous or do you remember?
We don't know where anything is from previous.
Okay.
So I think we should probably get a new quote from a paint company. I believe it was too high up that our crew didn't want to get up there.
Without stepping on your toes, can we ask Jose to get that in
Jose
the
can,
next few days?
Jose can do it.
have it ready for the workshop.
Okay.
I'd appreciate that.
The cost of all of this new city hall and everything is going to take longer than the next couple of
Yeah.
weeks.
Sure.
Okay.
I understand that.
All right.
I'm just talking about that one deal there. The city hall thing, it's been on the plate for a long time. It's been a
Yeah.
stalemate. I
Yeah.
realize that, and we guys got to come together and figure out a plan. It's something that people keep talking about. We hear it on both sides. So,
And as our team is growing for the city staff, I mean, we need to have staff be able to work efficiently in the spaces they have too. So, having those plans and working out the short-term plan or midterm plan is important too. A question going back to the library is, do we know how long our agreement with Mid-Columbia Library is? That's separate, but do we have any other requirements of things we're supposed to do, like capital maintenance, other than painting and replacing the fascia? Do we know?
I don't know, but we found the contract, I think, didn't we, Carla? We found that contract so we could look. I think we do all the maintenance there, don't we?
the building's ours, isn't it?
Yeah, we own the building.
Yeah. They just come work in it for us, it's kind of like partnership deal, I think.
Thanks
So,
for the clarification. I'm still working to get up to speed on stuff.
okay, set date for project planning workshop, 2024, budget adjustments.
Is that supposed to be 2022? Because I know we're spending a lot of time talking about our 2023, 2024 plan, but my understanding is we have to submit a revised 2022 budget.
I think this is our 2023, 2024 planning where we want to see the projects go and how we want to set them to go. I thought that's what we discussed. Because we said to set it in January. Is that right, Madam Mayor?
Yes, I think so.
And then you're right. That's something that we didn't discuss at tonight's budget meeting, but our budget workshop, but that's something for you, Sarah. We need to have those budget adjustments ready for approval at that next meeting or soon thereafter. I think we can do them in January, can't we?
I think so too. I haven't found anything that has a date on them, date on 2022. Carla, is that something you've come across yet?
I have not.
What's the
Okay.
question?
Budget adjustments that have to be done, do they have to be done by the end of fiscal year
For 22.
for
budget.
funds that are over, under?
Like a reconciliation end of year? Before we adopt our next budget. Is that the
Yeah.
question?
Okay, so then it needs to be done at probably the next meeting or
Yeah,
at the special meeting for the
I think
budget.
we'd want to have those reconciliations probably done before we adopt a final budget. The final budget's due by what?
The first.
I don't think you're ever going to have final numbers for December until December's over, though. That's not realistic. think we need to check and see. I think the periods in January, or I don't know, there's got to be somewhere we can validate when it's due.
I think we have like 20 days into January, basically call it the 13th month. And it's like the 20th.
But our hearing on the final budget has to be concluded by the 25th of December.
Is it by the 25th?
Yeah,
I thought it was the 31st.
On the
that
next
may
budget.
be when the budget is quote, I guess, final, but the hearing can't be continued past the 25th. That's my understanding.
Oh. But the hearing has to have
It needs
2 weeks
start by
notice,
the
right?
first Monday in December, and then it needs to be concluded by the 25th. Which of course, in most cases, is probably gonna happen prior to that, since that's Christmas.
Yeah, well, but we got to post it for 2 weeks prior to that, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Now there's notice for 2 consecutive weeks.
Yeah, it's gonna mess us all up.
I think we're a little bit challenged in the schedule anyway, because some of the things needed to happen already sooner than they have. I think we're doing our best to get completed by the end of the year at this point.
Yeah, we'll have to talk to you. Figure out what we can resolve
Yeah.
on this. 'Cause
Okay.
We're up against that.
All right. With that, I think we are finished with our discussion items. And we can move into
Executive
the
session.
executive session to evaluate the council candidates.
And so if I could just real quickly, Mayor, so the references, the statutory references here are incorrect. So the first executive session item, which I would note also, there's going to be action on that item after the executive session. That statutory reference should state 42.30.110 subsection 1H. So it's just a minor correction to that first one. The second executive session under RCW 42.30.110, again, subsection 1, little I, and then I believe that this would be open parens, 2 little i's, specifically litigation that the agency reasonably believes may be commenced by or against the agency, the governing body, or a member acting in an official capacity. And finally, that last executive item is the citation there is correct. I would just add to that it's related to litigation or legal risks of proposed action or current practice the agency has identified when such discussion in public could result in adverse legal or financial consequences to the agency. And items 2 and 3, my understanding is there won't be any action after those tonight. So just the first item.
Okay, and I think we moved those 2 items to
We
the
move
end.
those
Oh.
to the
We're just
end,
doing the first one.
right? So, with that, I am going to close the public meeting. And then
Mean a recording or the video?
She said the recording.
Okay.
okay, we've ended the executive session and now we're moving into the council meeting, resuming. And
So items for approval, number 1.
items for approval, number 1 is to the second reading of ordinance 1044, vacate an unnamed right-of-way.
Do we get a specific motion on that in here?
On PDF page 332, but I have to get there. Sorry.
332?
332. 332. Oh,
There we go. You gonna run that or you want me to?
apparently I'm not on the right page, so if you can, that would be great. I apologize.
I move to approve on its second reading ordinance 1044, an ordinance of the city of Benton, city, Washington, to vacate an unnamed right-of-way alley.
Second,
Is there any discussion? All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Sandra, do I?
Wadsworth, I.
Funk, aye.
Great eye.
Okay, motion carries. The next item is 414 9th Street sewer relocation change order 1. Are there,
It's on PDF, page 396.
Thank you, Sarah.
I appreciate that.
yeah,
I move to approve payment of change order number 1 in the amount of $25,696.04, which includes sales tax.
Second.
okay. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Sandra, do I?
Wadsworth, I.
Funk, aye.
Great eye.
Okay, motion carries. The next item is for Hope Lane Water Line Project Change Order number 4, removing existing SSMH, which I don't know what that means. Is that the asphalt or? And installation of new SSMH.
So this is on PDF, page 405, but I'm not sure what that acronym means either, or HMA patch.
What that means?
I think that's asphalt work. This is for opening, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Asphalt work.
Hot something asphalt.
Okay,
Okay. I move to approve the Hope Lane change order number 4 in the amount of $39,889.07, which includes sales tax.
Second.
okay. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Sandra, do I?
Wadsworth, I.
Funk, aye.
Great eye.
Okay, motion carries. And then our last item is confirmation of the council member.
I'm sure I'm gonna mess this up, but I move to confirm Diana Alcazar for the position of city council, city of Benton, city, Washington.
Second.
All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Sandra, do I?
Wadsworth, I.
Great eye.
Funk, aye.
Congratulations. Thank you. Okay, motion carries. Now, we will be moving into two executive sessions. I imagine this will take a while. And I don't foresee any action except changing the numbers of these executive sessions following. Can we do that now before we go into executive
Yeah,
session?
so we'll be in executive session under 42-30-110 subsection I, little I, and then a double little I. I know it's confused, a lot of I's there. That's the potential litigation item, and then the reference with respect to 3 is accurate.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
sorry, are we at a point where we need to extend the meeting?
Yes.
Are we?
Yeah.
Madam Mayor, I'll move to extend the meeting past 10 o'clock, 1 hour.
Great second.
All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Sandra, do I?
Wadsworth, I.
Funk, aye.
Great eye.
And then Mr. Briggs, would you please repeat the motion so that we can make this change?
The motion for, well, it wasn't a motion. I just wanted the minutes and the meeting to reflect that an accurate statutory reference, because the agenda doesn't. I think we're past the point of amending the agenda.
Yeah.
So I just want to make clear that with respect to executive session item 2 in the agenda, we'll be meeting on that piece under 4230, 110, open parens 1, close parens, open parens, little I, close parens, open parens, 2 little i's, close parens. And under 3, that reference is accurate. As far as time, I don't know. I'm hoping that it won't take an hour to get through these 2 items, but
Well, I'm hoping not either, but what's the time frame you think?
I was gonna suggest 30 minutes, but
30?
yeah.
Okay,
So take a 5 minutes to clear the
Yeah.
room
yes.
and then.
And then if
reconvene
anyone,
At 10.
right, 10:30, if, I don't believe there's going to be any action following. So if anyone is wanting to go home, I would suggest you're free to do so now. Okay,
Yeah, yeah.
I am now going
We
to
will,
adjourn this meeting and go into executive session for 30 minutes.
end executive session.
I'm sorry. Oh, yeah. Meeting's adjourned.
No action, meeting's adjourned.
Who first and seconded? I didn't hear anything.
I first did it and Jessica second.
Okay.
I.
I.
Okay.